Everyone tells you to put money in your wallet and watch it multiply. I'm going to tell you something that sounds utterly ridiculous. Put a single sentence, just 12 words, folded twice behind your credit cards, and watch your entire financial reality bend toward you like iron to a magnet. Not because of magic, not because God suddenly noticed you, but because you've been holding the creative force of the universe hostage in your own doubt, and this simple act, this almost embarrassingly simple act, breaks the dam. I've watched millionaires ignore this and stay miserable. I've watched widows with nothing practice this and become surrounded by abundance. The difference wasn't their circumstances. It was what they carried closest to their money. I want you to imagine something with me right now. Picture yourself reaching into your wallet or your purse, and there, tucked between the bills or the receipts or that old coffee shop loyalty card, is a small piece of paper. On it, written in your own hand, are words so powerful that they've been changing lives for thousands of years. Words that don't just sit there on that paper, but pulse with energy. Words that work on your behalf every single hour of every single day, reshaping your circumstances, opening doors that seem permanently locked, bringing opportunities that you'd given up hoping for. Now, I know what you might be thinking. You might be saying to yourself, Joseph, that sounds too simple. A piece of paper in my wallet. Really? That's going to change my life? And I understand that skepticism. I really do. Because we've been taught that transformation requires struggle, that success demands sacrifice, that we have to push and force and fight our way to everything good in life. But what if I told you that the greatest power you possess isn't in your muscles or your willpower or even in how hard you work? What if the secret to everything you've ever wanted lies not in doing more, but in believing differently? You see, for over 40 years, I've studied the mysterious connection between what happens in the invisible realm of your thoughts and what manifests in the visible world of your circumstances. I've watched people go from poverty to prosperity, from sickness to health, from despair to joy, not by changing their external situation first, but by changing what they carried in their consciousness. And today, I'm going to share with you one of the most practical, powerful tools I've ever discovered. One specific scripture, one arrangement of words so precisely aligned with the laws of mind that when you carry it with you, when you read it morning and night, when you let it sink deep into your subconscious mind, your entire world begins to reorganize itself around abundance. This isn't magic. This isn't wishful thinking. This is spiritual law, as reliable as gravity, as dependable as the sunrise. And by the time we're finished here today, you're going to understand exactly how it works and exactly what to do. Now, let me share with you something that most people never grasp about their subconscious mind. You see, your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't debate. It doesn't question whether what you're telling it is true or false, good or bad, helpful or harmful. It simply accepts. Think about that for a moment. Your subconscious mind is like the most faithful servant you could ever imagine. Whatever you habitually think, whatever you consistently believe, whatever you repeatedly feel, your subconscious accepts it all as instruction, as command, as the blueprint for your life. This is why two people can go through the exact same circumstances and have completely different outcomes. One person loses their job and falls into depression, convinced that life is against them, that they'll never recover. 6 months later, they're still struggling, still bitter, still stuck. Another person loses the same job and immediately begins to see it as redirection, as an opportunity, as the universe making space for something better. 6 months later, they're in a position they never would have applied for, otherwise happier, earning more, grateful it happened. Same event. Different instruction to the subconscious, different results. Your subconscious mind doesn't care about facts. It cares about feeling. It responds to conviction. When you tell yourself something with emotion, with feeling, with repetition, your subconscious says, yes, this must be true, and it goes to work making it so. This is the secret that transformed my own life, and I've watched it transform thousands of others. I've seen people heal their bodies by changing their thoughts. I've seen marriages restored. I've seen businesses built from nothing but an idea and unwavering faith. I've seen poverty transformed into abundance, depression into joy, failure into success. And here's what I want you to understand. None of these people were special. They weren't chosen. They didn't have connections you don't have. They simply learn to speak to their subconscious mind in the language it understands, the language of faith, feeling, and expectation. You are doing this already, whether you know it or not. Right now, at this very moment, you are programming your subconscious mind. The question is, what are you programming it with? Are you programming it with fear, with doubt, with the endless repetition of what you don't want? Or are you consciously choosing thoughts that align with what you do want? Listen carefully. Your subconscious mind does not argue with you. It does not say, well, let me think about that. It simply accepts what you feed it as truth. If you say, I can't afford this, your subconscious says, yes, master, you're right. If you say, I'm always sick in winter, your subconscious begins to orchestrate that reality. If you say, nothing ever works out for me, you're giving your subconscious a direct order to make sure nothing works out. This is why you must become vigilant about the words you speak and the thoughts you habitually think. They are not just casual observations about your life. They are commands. They are instructions to the most powerful creative force you possess. Now, here's something that might shock you. Your subconscious mind is working for you 24 hours a day. While you sleep, while you eat, while you're distracted by the trivialities of daily life, it's working. It never takes a vacation. It never clocks out. And it's working according to the blueprint you've given it. Think about that. Right now, as you hear these words, your subconscious is busy creating your tomorrow. It's attracting circumstances, influencing your decisions, even affecting your health, all based on the habitual patterns you've impressed upon it. So what happens when you begin to change those patterns? What happens when you start to consciously impress upon your subconscious mind thoughts of abundance, health, success, and joy? Everything changes. I've seen this happen thousands of times. A man who couldn't hold a job suddenly finds himself with opportunities he never imagined. A woman who was convinced she'd never find love meets her life partner within months of changing her inner conversation. Someone riddled with anxiety discovers peace they thought was impossible. These aren't miracles. They're natural consequences of working with the law instead of against it. But here's what you need to understand. The change doesn't always happen instantly. Your subconscious mind has been programmed over years, perhaps decades. You can't expect to erase all that conditioning overnight. This requires persistence. This requires faith. This requires you to continue impressing the right thoughts, even when external circumstances haven't yet changed. Think of a gardener who plants seeds. Does the gardener dig up the seeds every day to check if they're growing? Does he become anxious and worried when he doesn't see immediate sprouts? Of course not. He trusts the process. He knows that beneath the surface, invisible to his eyes, life is stirring. Roots are forming. Growth is happening. You must adopt this same attitude with your mental seeds. When you plant a thought in your subconscious mind, when you impress it with feeling and conviction, you have set forces into motion. These forces are working beneath the surface of your awareness. They are rearranging circumstances. They are attracting opportunities. They are preparing the way for your desired outcome. But if you keep digging up your mental seeds with doubt, with fear, with contradictory thoughts, you will abort the process. You will destroy the very thing you're trying to create. This is why I say to you, once you have prayed, once you have impressed your desire upon your subconscious mind with feeling and faith, release it. Let it go. Trust that it is done. Continue with your daily affirmations, yes, but do so from a place of confidence, not desperation. From a place of knowing, not hoping. There is a vast difference between these two states of mind. When you hope, you are acknowledging lack. You are saying, I don't have this yet, and I'm not sure I will get it, but I hope I do. This is the consciousness of poverty, of limitation. When you know, you are acknowledging fulfillment. You are saying, this is already mine in consciousness. It is done. I am simply waiting for the physical manifestation to catch up with my mental acceptance. This is the consciousness of abundance, of completion. Can you feel the difference in these two mental attitudes? Can you sense how one vibrates with doubt while the other vibrates with certainty? Your subconscious mind responds to certainty. It responds to the feeling of the wish fulfilled. It responds when you assume the consciousness of already being the person you wish to become, of already having what you desire. This is not self-deception. This is not denying reality. This is understanding that there are two realities. The outer reality of circumstances, which is temporary and changeable, and the inner reality of consciousness, which is causal and creative. You must learn to live from the inner reality, not the outer one. When you live from the inner reality of consciousness, you become immune to the fluctuations of the outer world. Not immune in the sense that nothing affects you, but immune in the sense that nothing can shake your foundation. Your peace, your faith, your knowing becomes unshakable because it is rooted in the infinite, not the finite. I have seen people lose everything in the material world, their homes, their savings, their positions, and yet within months, sometimes weeks, they have rebuilt their lives even more magnificently than before. Why? Because they never lost their inner wealth. They never surrendered their consciousness of abundance. The outer loss was temporary, the inner conviction was permanent. And I have seen others who possess every material advantage crumble at the first sign of trouble. They collapse because they have built their entire identity on shifting sand, on external conditions that were never truly theirs to control. They have no foundation in consciousness, no anchor in the infinite. Your work is to build that anchor. Your work is to establish yourself so firmly in the truth of who you are and what is available to you through your subconscious mind that no circumstance, however dire it may appear, can shake your faith. This requires daily practice, daily discipline. You cannot attend one lecture, read one book, say one affirmation, and expect your entire life to transform. The subconscious mind is like soil. You must tend it. You must water it with truth. You must pull the weeds of negative thinking before they take root. You must protect it from the harsh elements of doubt, fear, and mass consciousness. Every morning before the world imposes its beliefs upon you, you must impress your subconscious with the truth. This is your sacred time. This is when you define your day, rather than letting your day define you. Sit quietly, close your eyes, enter into the silence where the infinite dwells. And there, in that holy space, claim your good. See it, feel it, accept it as already done. Do not beg, do not plead, do not hope, simply accept. The infinite is not withholding anything from you. You are withholding yourself from the infinite by your limited beliefs and your habitual patterns of thought. Every night, before sleep claims you, review your day not as it was, but as you wish it had been. This is not dishonesty. This is revision. Neville Goddard taught this practice with profound conviction. He would say that if you had an argument with someone during the day, do not let the sun set on that version of reality. Instead, replay the scene in your imagination, but this time, see the conversation unfold harmoniously. Hear them speak kindly to you. Feel the warmth of reconciliation. Experience it as vividly as if it were happening now. You might ask, what good does that do? The event already happened, and here is where most people stumble. They think the past is fixed, immovable, carved into the stone of time. But consciousness does not obey the rules of linear time. Your subconscious mind does not know the difference between a memory and an imagined event. It only knows the impression you give it. When you revise your day, you are not erasing what happened in the physical world. You are changing the energetic signature of that event within you. You are refusing to carry the burden of discord into your sleep, into your subconscious, into tomorrow's creation. You are consciously choosing which version of reality you will accept as true. This is radical responsibility. This is power. I have seen people transform their relationships using this technique alone. A woman once told me that she and her sister had not spoken for 3 years after a bitter argument. Every night she began to revise that argument. She imagined her sister calling her, voice soft with love, saying, "I miss you." She heard herself responding with grace. She felt the embrace they would share. She did this faithfully every night for months. Then one afternoon, her phone rang. It was her sister. The first words out of her mouth, "I miss you." Coincidence? The skeptic will say so. But those who practice revision know better. They know that imagination is the true creative force, and that what you persistently assume in consciousness must eventually harden into fact. Now, I want to share with you a principle that will revolutionize your entire understanding of prayer and manifestation. Most people pray from a position of lack. They beg, they plead, they ask God to give them what they do not have, and in doing so, they perpetuate the very state of lack they wish to escape. True prayer is not begging. True prayer is thanksgiving. True prayer assumes the wish already fulfilled. When you pray with the feeling of already having received, you align yourself with the law of assumption. You do not pray for healing, you give thanks that you are already healed. You do not pray for abundance, you give thanks that abundance is already yours. You do not pray for love, you give thanks that love surrounds you now. This is not deception. This is not pretending. This is impressing upon your subconscious mind the state you wish to experience. And your subconscious, which cannot distinguish between a real experience and one vividly imagined, accepts it as true and begins to manifest it in your outer world. I knew a woman who was deeply in debt. She owed thousands of dollars and saw no way out. Every night she would lie awake worrying about the bills, the phone calls from creditors, the mounting pressure. Her prayers were desperate pleas. Please God, help me pay these debts. Please send me money. But nothing changed. In fact, her situation worsened. Then she learned this principle of thanksgiving. Instead of praying from lack, she began to pray from fulfillment. Each night before sleep, she would imagine herself writing checks to pay off every debt. She would feel the relief, the freedom, the joy of being debt-free. She would whisper, "Thank you, Father, for my complete financial freedom." Within 3 months, everything shifted. An unexpected inheritance came through. A forgotten insurance claim was settled in her favor. Opportunities for additional income appeared seemingly out of nowhere. Within 6 months, every single debt was paid in full. Was this coincidence? Was this luck? No. This was the law in action. She stopped praying from lack and began praying from fulfillment. She stopped begging and began thanking. And the universe responded in kind. This is the secret that changes everything. You don't pray for what you want. You pray from what you want. You don't ask to be wealthy. You give thanks that abundance flows through you now. You don't beg for healing. You feel the wellness in every cell of your body this very moment. You don't plead for love. You embody the consciousness of someone who is deeply, profoundly loved. This isn't positive thinking. This isn't affirmations. This is quantum reality. When you pray from the state of the wish fulfilled, you collapse the wave function. You select the timeline. You claim the parallel reality where your desire already exists. I've seen this principle work in the most impossible circumstances. A man came to me once, drowning in debt, creditors calling daily, on the verge of bankruptcy. I told him what I'm telling you now. Stop praying to get out of debt. Start praying from financial freedom. He looked at me like I'd lost my mind. How can I feel financially free when I'm about to lose everything? I said, that's exactly why you must. Your current feelings created your current circumstances. New circumstances require new feelings first, not second. He began a practice every night before sleep. He would lie in bed and imagine his banker calling to tell him his accounts were overflowing. He would feel the relief, the joy, the gratitude. He would touch this feeling until it became more real than his present situation. Within 3 months, an old business contact reached out about a deal he'd forgotten about from years ago. Money he'd written off as lost. It wasn't just enough to cover his debts. It was 3 times that amount. Coincidence? I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I believe in consciousness creating reality. The universe doesn't respond to your words. It responds to your vibration. It responds to the frequency you're broadcasting from your subconscious mind. When you pray from lack, you broadcast lack. When you pray from fulfillment, you broadcast fulfillment. And the universe, being the perfect mirror that it is, reflects back to you exactly what you're broadcasting. This is why gratitude is so powerful. Not gratitude as a technique, not gratitude as something you should do, but gratitude as the natural emotional state of someone who already has what they desire. Let me show you what I mean. Most people try to practice gratitude by making lists. I'm grateful for my house. I'm grateful for my family. I'm grateful for my health. And they wonder why it feels hollow, why nothing changes. Because that's gratitude from the state of lack. You're grateful for what you have because you're afraid of losing it. You're grateful as insurance, as protection against fate. That's not the gratitude I'm talking about. The gratitude that changes everything is gratitude for what hasn't manifested yet. It's the gratitude you feel when you're so identified with your wish fulfilled that saying thank you is as natural as breathing. Think about it. When you receive something you truly wanted, something that moves you deeply, what happens? You don't have to remember to be grateful. You don't have to practice appreciation. It flows out of you spontaneously. That's the state you must enter before the manifestation occurs. I once worked with a woman who wanted to heal a relationship with her daughter. Years of distance, misunderstanding, pain. And she came to me with her lists, her affirmations, her desperate gratitude practices that felt like bargaining with God. I told her to stop all of it. Instead, I asked her to spend 10 minutes each night simply feeling the warmth of reconciliation already accomplished, not visualizing a future conversation, not hoping for change, but resting in the feeling of already having her daughter back in her life. How does it feel, I asked, when you already have what you want? And from that feeling, gratitude arose naturally, not forced, not manufactured, just the quiet, deep appreciation of someone who has received their heart's desire. 3 weeks later, her daughter called out of nowhere. The conversation they'd been unable to have for years unfolded effortlessly. Was it coincidence? Was it timing? Or was it that by assuming the feeling of the wish fulfilled, by entering that state of natural gratitude, she became a vibrational match for what she desired? Your subconscious mind doesn't distinguish between what you vividly imagine and what you physically experience. When you feel genuine gratitude for your wish fulfilled, your subconscious accepts it as accomplished. And then, because your subconscious controls 90% of your life, it begins to orchestrate circumstances to match your assumption. This is why feeling is the secret. Not thinking about what you want, not hoping for it, not wishing it were true, but actually feeling the reality of it now, in this present moment. You see, most people approach gratitude backwards. They say, I'll be grateful when I get the money. I'll be grateful when I meet the right person. I'll be grateful when my health improves. But that's the old way of thinking gratitude as a response to external conditions. What I'm teaching you is something far more powerful, gratitude as a causative force, gratitude that comes before the evidence, gratitude that creates the condition rather than responds to it. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you desire financial freedom. The conventional approach would have you working harder, worrying about bills, feeling the lack, hoping things will change. And yes, you might say a few words of thanks here and there, but your dominant feeling is one of need, of wanting, of not having. Now, contrast that with the approach I'm showing you. You close your eyes, and you really feel what it would be like to have financial freedom right now. You feel the relief, the security, the peace of mind. The gratitude wells up naturally because in your imagination, it's already yours. You're not pretending. You're not lying to yourself. You're using your divine gift of imagination to experience the end result before it manifests physically. And here's what happens. When you do this consistently, something shifts inside you. Your entire vibration changes. You begin to think differently. Opportunities you would have missed suddenly catch your attention. Ideas flow to you. The right people appear. Circumstances align. Not through magic, but through the natural creative power of your subconscious mind responding to your impressed feeling. This is scientific. This is law. Your subconscious mind is always creating your tomorrow based on your habitual thoughts and feelings of today. Now, I want you to understand something crucial. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It doesn't question. It doesn't say, "Are you sure about that?" It simply accepts what you impress upon it. This is why repetition is so powerful. When you repeat a thought, an idea, a belief over and over again, your subconscious mind accepts it as true. It doesn't matter whether the thought is good or bad, true or false, constructive or destructive. Your subconscious mind will accept it and begin to express it in your life. Think about worry for a moment. Worry is simply the misuse of your imagination. When you worry, you are actually using the creative power of your subconscious mind against yourself. You're impressing negative images and feelings upon your subconscious, and it responds by creating circumstances that match those images. The person who constantly worries about losing their job is programming their subconscious mind for failure. The person who worries about illness is actually inviting illness into their experience. But here's the wonderful truth. You can reverse this process at any time. You can begin right now to impress new thoughts, new beliefs, new images upon your subconscious mind. You can decide today that you will no longer be a victim of negative thinking. You can choose to become the architect of your own fortune. I've seen this transformation happen countless times. A woman came to me once who had been suffering from chronic anxiety for years. She couldn't sleep, she couldn't relax. She was convinced that something terrible was always about to happen. I taught her a simple technique. Every night before sleep, she would repeat to herself, "I am at peace, I am safe. Divine love surrounds me and protects me." At first, her conscious mind resisted. It said, "This isn't true, you're not at peace." But she persisted. Night after night, she impressed these words upon her subconscious mind. Within 3 weeks, her anxiety began to diminish. Within 2 months, she was sleeping peacefully through the night. Her outer world had changed because her inner world had changed first. This is the secret that changes everything. You must saturate your subconscious mind with the idea of what you want, not what you fear. Your subconscious mind is like a garden. Whatever seeds you plant will grow. If you plant seeds of fear, worry and doubt, those will flourish. If you plant seeds of faith, confidence and success, those will multiply instead. The soil doesn't judge. It simply accepts what you give it and brings it forth into your experience. I've watched this principle work in countless lives. A businessman came to me once, convinced his company was heading toward bankruptcy. Every morning he woke up visualizing creditors at his door. Every night he fell asleep rehearsing conversations about failure. His subconscious mind, being the faithful servant it is, was working overtime to make his mental pictures a reality. I asked him a simple question. If you spent as much time imagining success as you do imagining failure, what do you think would happen? He looked at me as though I'd suggested something revolutionary. But here's the truth: worrying is just negative goal setting. When you worry, you're using the same creative power that could build your fortune, except you're using it to construct your downfall. I taught him to reverse the process. Before sleep each night, he would imagine his business thriving. He'd see customers streaming through his doors. He'd feel the satisfaction of deposits being made. He'd hear words of congratulation from his suppliers. He didn't deny his current circumstances, he simply stopped feeding them with his attention. Within 6 months, his business had completely turned around. New opportunities appeared that he couldn't have predicted. Solutions to problems emerged spontaneously. His accountant called it a miracle, but it wasn't a miracle at all. It was the natural result of impressing his subconscious mind with images of prosperity rather than poverty. This is what most people never understand. Your subconscious doesn't care whether what you're imagining is good or bad, beneficial or harmful. It simply accepts the dominant impression you give it and works to make it real. You are impressing it every moment of every day with your habitual thinking. Think about that for a moment. Right now, in this very instant, you are programming your future. The thoughts you're thinking today are creating the conditions you'll experience tomorrow. Not someday in the distant future, tomorrow, next week, next month. Because when you convince your subconscious mind of something, it doesn't argue, it doesn't debate, it doesn't say, "Well, let me think about that for a while." No, it accepts what you impress upon it as truth, and then it goes to work making that truth your reality. This is why affirmations work. This is why visualization works. This is why the simple act of deciding, truly deciding, can change everything. You see, most people think deciding means hoping. They say, "I've decided I want to be successful," but what they really mean is, "I hope I'll be successful someday if things work out." That's not a decision. That's a wish wrapped in uncertainty. A real decision is a command to your subconscious mind. It's a declaration. It's you standing at the threshold of your own consciousness and saying, "This is what we're doing now. This is who we are becoming. There is no plan B." And here's what happens when you make that kind of decision. Your entire inner world reorganizes itself around that choice. Your subconscious mind begins filtering your perceptions differently. Opportunities you would have overlooked suddenly become visible. Conversations that would have meant nothing suddenly contain exactly the information you need. People who can help you seem to appear out of nowhere. Is this magic? No. Your subconscious mind is connected to an infinite intelligence. When you give it a clear directive, it taps into resources you didn't even know existed. It draws upon wisdom, guidance, and creative solutions from depths you cannot consciously access. I've counseled thousands of people over the years, and I can tell you this with absolute certainty. The moment someone truly decides, not hopes, not wishes, but decides, that's the moment everything begins to shift. I remember a woman who came to me, drowning in debt, paralyzed by fear. She'd tried everything, or so she thought. She'd budgeted, she'd worked extra hours, she'd worried herself sick. None of it works, she told me. That's because you haven't decided, I said. She looked at me like I was speaking a foreign language. What do you mean? I've decided I want to get out of debt. No, I said gently. You've decided you want to get out of debt. You haven't claimed financial freedom as your present reality and consciousness. We worked together on this. Every night before sleep, she impressed upon her subconscious mind the feeling of financial freedom. Not the future feeling, the present feeling. She felt grateful for money flowing to her. She felt the relief, the peace, the security, as if it were already hers. Within 3 months, everything changed. A promotion she hadn't expected. An old debt forgiven through a legal technicality she didn't even know existed. A skill she possessed suddenly in demand. She wasn't striving anymore. She was allowing. And in that allowance, everything shifted. You see, this is where most people get confused. They think surrender means giving up. They think it means sitting on the couch, doing nothing, waiting for manna to fall from heaven. But that's not what I'm describing at all. The woman still went to work. She still paid her bills. She still took action in the physical world. But the quality of her action had transformed. Before, her actions came from desperation, from fear, from a frantic need to force outcomes. Now, her actions flowed from peace, from knowing, from an inner certainty that she was already cared for. She moved through the world differently. People noticed. Her boss mentioned it in passing. You seem more confident lately. A colleague asked if she'd been on vacation. Her sister said she looked younger. Nothing external had changed yet, and everything had changed. The shift happened first in consciousness, then it began to materialize in her circumstances. And here's what I want you to understand. The subconscious mind doesn't recognize the difference between a thought accepted and a physical fact. When you impress a conviction upon your subconscious with feeling, with acceptance, with the naturalness of already being, it must produce corresponding conditions. It's law, not theory, not wishful thinking. Law. Just as the law of gravity doesn't care whether you believe in it, the law of consciousness doesn't require your permission to operate. You're using it right now, this very moment, whether you know it or not. The only question is, are you using it deliberately or by default? Most people use it by default. They replay their fears, rehearse their limitations, and then wonder why those exact patterns keep showing up in their lives. They say, see, I knew it wouldn't work out, never realizing they were the architect of that outcome. The woman in our story had been doing exactly that for years, but now she had learned a different way. She had discovered that the same creative power that had manifested her struggles could manifest her freedom. Same power, different direction. And this is the truth that most people never grasp. They think they need a different power for health than they need for wealth. They think prosperity requires one force, while healing requires another. They divide their mind into compartments, never realizing they're working with the same infinite intelligence in every area of life. I once counseled a man who had achieved remarkable success in business. His company thrived, his investments multiplied. He had the golden touch when it came to money. Yet his body was falling apart, chronic pain, deteriorating health, multiple surgeries. He said to me, Dr. Murphy, I don't understand. I can manifest wealth so easily. Why can't I manifest health? And I asked him a simple question. What do you think about your body? The answer came immediately. I think about what's wrong with it. I think about the pain. I think about what might go wrong next. And what do you think about when you're making business decisions? His face changed. I think about success. I think about opportunities. I think about growth and expansion. Do you see it? Same man, same creative power, but he was directing it differently in different areas of his life. With his business, he planted seeds of success. With his body, he planted seeds of disease. And the subconscious mind, like the soil, grew both with perfect impartiality. This is why affirmations fail for so many people. They recite positive statements about health, while their dominant mental attitude remains fearful. They declare abundance, while their habitual thoughts revolve around lack. They're trying to plant roses while watering weeds. Your subconscious doesn't care about your occasional positive thought. It responds to your habitual thinking, your dominant mental atmosphere, the emotional tone you maintain day after day. That's what creates your reality. Consider water. The same H2O that becomes ice can become steam, same substance, different temperature. Same creative power in you can manifest poverty or prosperity, sickness or health, failure or success. The power doesn't change. Your mental temperature does. And here's what changes the temperature: your assumptions, the things you assume to be true about yourself, about life, about what's possible for you. These assumptions operate below conscious awareness, running your life like a hidden program. Your subconscious doesn't question your assumptions. It doesn't debate them or analyze whether they're serving you well. It simply accepts them as instructions and works tirelessly to make them your reality. If you assume you're unlucky in love, your subconscious will guide you toward relationships that confirm that belief. If you assume money is hard to come by, you'll consistently find yourself in situations where financial struggle feels inevitable. If you assume people can't be trusted, you'll unconsciously create circumstances where betrayal seems to follow you everywhere. This isn't punishment. This isn't the universe being cruel. It's simply the law in action, impersonal, exact, automatic. But here's where it gets interesting. Most people never examine their assumptions. They inherited them from parents, absorbed them from culture, adopted them during moments of pain or confusion. These assumptions became lodged in the subconscious years ago, sometimes decades ago, and they've been running the show ever since. You're walking around with a set of beliefs installed in childhood, many of them outdated, many of them false, and wondering why your adult life feels so limited. It's like trying to run modern software on a computer from 1995. The hardware can't support what you're trying to create. The beautiful truth Murphy discovered is that you can change these assumptions. You can reprogram the subconscious. You can install new beliefs, new patterns, new instructions. And when you do, everything shifts. Not because you're forcing external circumstances to bend to your will, but because you're changing the inner temperature, and the outer world naturally reorganizes itself to match. The people, opportunities, and resources that align with your new assumption begin appearing. The obstacles that existed under the old assumption simply dissolve. I've watched this happen countless times. Someone assumes they're capable of success, really assumes it at the deepest level, and suddenly doors open that were invisible before. Not because the doors weren't there, but because the person couldn't see them through the filter of their old assumption. Your assumptions are the lens through which you perceive reality. Change the lens, change what you see, change what you see, change what you experience. This is why the man who assumes wealth sees opportunities everywhere, while the man who assumes poverty sees only obstacles. They walk the same streets, breathe the same air, encounter the same circumstances, but one lives in abundance, the other in lack. The difference: the assumption they've made about themselves and their relationship to the world. Let me be even more specific. Two people lose their jobs on the same day. One assumes, I am resourceful, I am valuable, something better is coming. The other assumes, I'm unlucky, nothing ever works out for me, I'm probably unemployable. Fast forward 6 months. The first person has found not just another job, but a better position. The second is still struggling, still bitter, still proving their original assumption correct. You might say, but Joseph, maybe the first person was just more qualified. Perhaps. Or perhaps their assumption of worthiness made them interview with confidence. Perhaps their assumption of abundance made them open to opportunities they would have otherwise dismissed. Perhaps their internal conviction created an external magnetism that employers felt. I'm not asking you to believe in magic. I'm asking you to recognize what psychologists now call the self-fulfilling prophecy. What I have been teaching for decades, science is now confirming. Your assumptions about reality actively shape your experience of reality. The alcoholic assumes he cannot stop drinking. That assumption becomes the chain that binds him. The sick person assumes they will never recover. That assumption becomes the ceiling of their healing. The lonely person assumes no one could truly love them. That assumption becomes the wall that keeps connection at bay. But here's where it gets truly liberating. Just as you assumed yourself into your current condition, you can assume yourself out of it. You are not bound by yesterday's assumption. You are not imprisoned by last year's conviction about yourself. Right now, in this very moment, you have the power to assume something entirely different. This is what I mean when I say feeling is the secret. You must feel yourself to be what you want to become, not hope to become it, not wish for it, not work toward it as something distant and future, but assume the feeling of the wish fulfilled now. The woman who desires marriage must assume the feeling of being happily married, not the anxious feeling of wanting to be married, not the desperate feeling of seeking a partner, but the calm, satisfied feeling of already being in that blessed union. And here's what happens when you maintain that feeling consistently. Your subconscious mind, which controls the vast majority of your actions, behaviors, and even the circumstances you attract, begins to operate from the assumption that you are already in a loving marriage. This is not fantasy. This is the practical application of mental law. Think about it. When someone already feels wealthy, they don't desperately grasp at money. When someone feels healthy, they don't obsessively worry about illness. And when someone feels married in consciousness, they don't emit that vibration of lack and desperation that repels potential partners. I remember a woman who came to me heartbroken after years of failed relationships. She said, "Dr. Murphy, I've tried everything. I've gone to every social event. I've joined dating services. I've asked friends to set me up. Nothing works." And I said to her, "You're trying to get something you think you don't have. Instead, assume you already have it in consciousness and let your subconscious mind bring it forth into manifestation." She was skeptical, but she agreed to practice the feeling. Every night before sleep, she would imagine a wedding ring on her finger. She would feel the presence of a loving husband beside her. She would thank God for her wonderful marriage, not in some future tense right now, in present awareness. Within 3 months, she met a man at a bookstore. She wasn't hunting. She wasn't desperate. She was simply browsing, feeling peaceful and complete within herself. He approached her. They began talking about a book they both admired, and that conversation led to coffee, which led to dinner, which led to a beautiful courtship and marriage. Was this coincidence? Absolutely not. This was consciousness creating circumstance. This was the subjective reality becoming objective fact. The same principle applies to every aspect of your married life, not just finding a partner. If you're already married and experiencing difficulties, you can use this same technique to transform your relationship. Your subconscious mind doesn't argue with you. It accepts what your conscious mind impresses upon it. If you constantly think, "My marriage is failing," your subconscious will work to validate that belief. But if you systematically replace that thought with, "My marriage is harmonious and filled with love," your subconscious will begin to manifest circumstances that reflect this new conviction. I counseled a woman whose marriage had deteriorated to the point where she and her husband barely spoke. They lived like strangers under the same roof. She came to me in despair, convinced that divorce was inevitable. I taught her this technique. Every night before sleep, she was to visualize her husband smiling at her with genuine warmth. She was to feel in her imagination the joy of his presence, to hear him speaking kindly to her, to sense the comfort of mutual understanding. For the first week, nothing changed in her outer circumstances. Her husband remained distant and cold, but she persisted. She disciplined her mind to reject every negative thought about him and replace it with the image she was building in her subconscious. When he ignored her at breakfast, she would silently affirm, "I see you as loving and attentive." When he came home late without explanation, instead of brewing resentment, she would close her eyes and imagine him greeting her with affection. 3 weeks into this practice, something shifted. Her husband came home one evening and actually asked about her day. It was a small thing, but it was the first genuine interest he had shown in months. She continued her mental work. Within 2 months, their relationship had transformed completely. They began talking again, laughing together, rediscovering the connection that had brought them together in the first place. What had happened? Had she changed him through some mystical power? No. She had changed herself. By changing her inner conviction about the marriage, she changed how she related to him. Her subconscious mind, accepting the new pattern, guided her actions, her tone of voice, her facial expressions in ways that invited a different response. And his subconscious, in turn, responded to this new energy. Within weeks, the entire atmosphere of their home had transformed. The arguments became less frequent, then rare. He became more considerate, more affectionate. She had not changed him, she had changed herself, and in changing herself, she changed the relationship. This is the law in action. The same principle applies to every human relationship you encounter. If you find yourself in conflict with a co-worker, a neighbor, a family member, you must first look within. What conviction are you holding? What pattern is your subconscious mind expressing through your behavior, your energy, your unspoken attitudes? I knew a businessman who was convinced that his partner was dishonest, that he was being cheated. Every interaction was colored by suspicion and resentment. The partnership was on the verge of collapse. I asked him a simple question: what if you're wrong? What if your partner is completely honest, and your suspicion is creating the very behavior you fear? He resisted this idea at first, as most people do. The ego wants to be right. But eventually he agreed to try an experiment. For 30 days, he would assume complete honesty and good faith on the part of his partner. He would speak to him with trust, treat him with respect, and refuse to entertain suspicious thoughts. The transformation was remarkable. Within 2 weeks, tensions had eased. Within a month, the partnership was stronger than it had ever been. And here's what's most interesting: when they finally sat down and examined the books together, openly and honestly, they discovered that there had never been any dishonesty at all. The perceived problem had existed only in his mind, but his conviction had nearly destroyed a valuable relationship. This is how powerful your inner convictions are. They don't just affect you, they affect everyone around you. Your subconscious mind is constantly broadcasting, and other people's subconscious minds are constantly receiving. When you change the broadcast, you change what comes back to you. Now, let me be clear about something important. This does not mean you should tolerate abuse or remain in genuinely toxic situations. If someone is truly harmful, destructive, or dangerous, you must protect yourself. Wisdom is required. But in the vast majority of relationship difficulties, the problem is not the other person, it's the pattern we're holding in our own subconscious mind. And here is the beautiful truth that changes everything. When you change the inner pattern, the outer relationship transforms, or, if it cannot transform, it naturally and peacefully dissolves, making way for something better. I've seen this happen countless times. A woman came to me once, complaining bitterly about her husband's coldness. She said he never showed affection, never praised her, never noticed her efforts. She had tried everything, talking to him, pleading with him, even threatening to leave. Nothing worked. I asked her a simple question: how do you think about him when he's not around? She hesitated. Then, slowly, the truth emerged. All day long, she rehearsed mental arguments with him. She catalogued his faults. She imagined telling her friends how inconsiderate he was. She replayed old hurts like worn-out records. Her mind was a continuous broadcast of resentment and disappointment. "And what are you expecting from him?" I asked. "I just want him to appreciate me, to be kind, to show some warmth." "Then that is what you must give him first in your mind." She looked at me as though I'd asked her to move a mountain. "But he doesn't deserve it. He hasn't earned it. This is the great stumbling block. We believe we must wait for the other person to change first. We think our resentment is justified, and perhaps it is from a limited, purely rational standpoint. But spiritual law doesn't operate on the basis of who deserves what. It operates on the principle of mental equivalence. What you mentally accept and emotionally feel, you will experience. I gave her a specific technique. Every night before sleep, she was to imagine her husband as kind, affectionate, and appreciative. She was to see him smiling at her, thanking her, embracing her warmly. She was to feel the warmth of his love, even if it contradicted her current experience. And whenever a resentful thought arose during the day, she was to replace it immediately with the image of him at his best. She agreed, though skeptically. 3 weeks later, she returned, astonished. "It's like I'm living with a different man," she said. "He's been thoughtful, tender. He even brought me flowers yesterday, something he hasn't done in years." But here's what really happened. She was seeing a different man because she had become a different woman. Her changed consciousness allowed her to perceive qualities that had always been there but were invisible to her resentful mind. And her new mental atmosphere evoked from him responses that matched her inner vision. This is the principle of relationship transformation operating at the level of consciousness. You don't need to manipulate, convince, or change another person. You need only to change your inner conviction about them. and the outer relationship reorganizes itself to match your mental picture. I've seen this work in business partnerships where resentment had built up over years. One partner came to me feeling betrayed, certain his associate was dishonest and untrustworthy. I asked him a simple question: can you imagine him being honest, fair, and working in harmony with you? At first he protested. But you don't understand what he's done. I said, I'm not asking you to condone the past. I'm asking if you can imagine a different present. He agreed to try. Each night before sleep, he practiced seeing his partner as honest, cooperative, and acting with integrity. He felt the relief of a harmonious partnership. He heard himself saying, I'm grateful for our mutual respect and fair dealing. Within 3 weeks, the situation transformed. The partner approached him with an idea for restructuring their agreement that was surprisingly fair. Conversations that had been tense became productive. The external relationship had no choice but to conform to the new mental mode. This isn't positive thinking. This is consciousness causation. You're not pretending things are different while believing they're the same. You're actually impressing a new belief upon your subconscious mind, and your subconscious then alters your perceptions, responses, and the subtle signals you send that evoke corresponding changes in others. Now, let me address a question that often arises. What if the other person doesn't change? What if your visualization doesn't seem to work? There are 2 possibilities. First, you may be affirming one thing consciously while believing another thing subconsciously. Your deeper conviction always wins. If you say, he's honest and kind, but you feel, he's probably still going to betray me, the feeling is your real belief. Second, and this is crucial, sometimes the answer to your desire for a harmonious relationship is the removal of that relationship from your life. Your subconscious mind knows the highest good for all concerned. Sometimes that highest good means peace through separation rather than peace through reconciliation. I've seen this countless times. A woman came to me deeply troubled because she'd been praying for months that her friendship with a particular person would improve, that the tension would dissolve, that they could return to how things once were. She used every technique I taught her. She visualized, she affirmed, she did everything correctly. But instead of improvement, the friendship ended completely. She thought she had failed. She thought her prayers weren't answered. But 6 months later, she wrote to me saying it was the greatest blessing of her life. That relationship, she realized, had been draining her vitality, dimming her light, keeping her small. The answer to her prayer for peace wasn't the healing of that friendship, it was her freedom from it. The subconscious always moves toward wholeness, toward health, toward your highest expression. Sometimes it knows that the only way to get you there is to remove what's blocking your path, even if consciously you're clinging to it. This is why you must always pray with the clause, this or something better. You're acknowledging that your conscious mind sees through a keyhole while your subconscious sees the entire room. Trust its wisdom. Trust that if a door closes firmly and finally, there's a reason written into the fabric of your life's unfolding. Now, let's talk about the third major obstacle I see when people try to apply these principles to relationships. They treat their mental work as separate from their actions. They think they can spend 15 minutes visualizing a loving relationship, then spend the rest of the day criticizing, complaining, and being resentful. This doesn't work. Your entire day is your prayer. Every word you speak, every reaction you have, every thought you entertain, these are all extensions of your inner conviction. If you visualize your partner being kind at night but complain about them to your friends during the day, you're neutralizing your own work. This is why consistency is the secret ingredient that most people overlook. You can't be a victim during the day and a deliberate creator at night. You can't curse your circumstances in the morning and visualize prosperity in the evening and expect the evening prayer to win. The subconscious doesn't play favorites, it accepts the most persistent impression. I remember speaking with a woman who was desperate to heal a relationship with her estranged daughter. Every night before bed, she would visualize reconciliation. She'd see them embracing, laughing, sharing meals together. She did this faithfully for weeks, yet nothing changed. When I asked her to describe her typical day, the truth emerged. Throughout her waking hours, she would tell anyone who'd listen about how stubborn her daughter was, how she'd been wronged, how unfair the whole situation felt. She was essentially praying her problem into permanent 16 hours a day, then trying to undo it with 10 minutes of visualization before sleep. The solution wasn't to visualize harder at night. It was to live from the wish fulfilled throughout the entire day. I suggested she begin speaking about her daughter as if the reconciliation had already happened. My daughter and I are so close now. I'm grateful for the beautiful relationship we share. Even when friends asked what was happening, she learned to say, "Things are wonderful between us," and then change the subject. She wasn't lying, she was occupying the state of the wish fulfilled. Within 3 weeks, her daughter reached out. A simple text message that led to a phone call, then coffee, then the restoration of their bond. The breakthrough didn't happen because the visualization technique suddenly started working. It happened because she stopped contradicting her desire all day long. This brings us to a crucial understanding. Your dominant state is what manifests. Not your occasional wish, not your desperate plea, not even your nightly visualization if you spend the rest of your time vibrating at a different frequency. Your dominant state is where you live emotionally most of the time. It's the tone of your inner conversation, the flavor of your thoughts when you're not paying attention. If you want to know what you're really impressing upon your subconscious, look at your results. Your current circumstances are a perfect mirror of your consistent inner dwelling place. This isn't about blame, it's about power. Because once you understand this principle, you realize you can change everything by changing where you habitually dwell in consciousness. Let me give you a clear picture of what I mean. Think about someone who constantly dwells in the consciousness of financial struggle. Every morning, their first thoughts are about bills. Throughout the day, they rehearse conversations about how expensive everything is. They look at their bank balance with anxiety. They feel their stomach tighten when expenses come up. This is their dwelling place, the mental home they return to again and again. Now, this doesn't mean they never think a positive thought about money. Maybe they buy a lottery ticket once a week. Maybe they say an affirmation while brushing their teeth. Maybe they even pray occasionally for a financial breakthrough. But those are visits, not dwelling. They're tourists in prosperity consciousness, but residents of lack. The subconscious mind doesn't respond to your occasional visitors. It responds to your permanent resident, the state you return to habitually, the atmosphere you breathe most consistently, the feeling you know so intimately it's like your own skin. This is why sporadic positive thinking produces sporadic results at best. You can't live in fear 23 hours a day and expect 1 hour of affirmations to transform your life. That's like expecting to get physically fit by thinking about exercise while sitting on your couch. Your dwelling place must change. And here's the beautiful part, it can change. You're not stuck where you are. Every moment is a new opportunity to move your consciousness to a new address. But this requires something most people aren't willing to give: consistency. Not intensity consistency. Not the occasional mountaintop experience, but the daily, moment-by-moment choice to redirect your awareness to where you want to be rather than where you've been. Think of it like this. Imagine you want to move to a new house. You wouldn't keep most of your belongings in your old house, sleep there most nights, spend most of your time there, and then wonder why your address hasn't changed. Yet this is exactly what people do mentally. They want to live in the consciousness of their wish fulfilled, but they keep all their mental furniture in their old state. They sleep in the old feelings, wake up to the old thoughts, and spend their days rehearsing the old story. And then they wonder why their lives haven't changed. You cannot think your way into a new feeling. You must feel your way into new thinking. This is the secret that eludes most people. They try to use willpower and affirmations to force a new mental state, but they haven't changed the emotional foundation upon which their thoughts rest. Let me give you a practical example. Suppose you want to experience financial abundance. You read all the right books, you say all the right affirmations, you visualize wealth coming to you. But when you check your bank account, your stomach tightens. When bills arrive, anxiety floods through you. When you see something you want to buy, you immediately think, "I can't afford that." These emotional reactions are your real state of consciousness. These feelings are what you're actually affirming, not the words you speak for 5 minutes in the morning. The subconscious mind doesn't care what you say. It responds to what you feel consistently. It responds to the emotional atmosphere in which you live. And most people live in an emotional atmosphere that completely contradicts what they claim to want. Here's what you must understand. Imagination is not about thinking. It's about feeling. When I ask you to imagine your wish fulfilled, I'm not asking you to think about it, I'm asking you to feel it as real now. This is why I constantly emphasize the feeling of the wish fulfilled. Not the thought of it, not the hope for it, the feeling of it. When you truly feel something, your entire body responds. Your posture changes, your breathing changes, your facial expression shifts. This is imagination becoming incarnate. This is consciousness taking form in your very flesh. And when you sustain this feeling, when you return to it again and again throughout your day, when you fall asleep in it at night, something miraculous happens. Your outer world begins to rearrange itself to match this inner feeling, not because you're manipulating reality with your mind, but because you are reality. Your consciousness is the only reality you will ever know. Change your consciousness and you change your world, not symbolically, literally. Your subconscious doesn't argue with you. It doesn't say, "Are you sure about that?" It accepts completely, without question, without judgment. This is why two people can live in identical circumstances and experience entirely different realities. Same house, same income, same neighborhood. But one walks through life feeling blessed, abundant, surrounded by opportunity. The other feels trapped, limited, perpetually struggling. What's the difference? Not their bank account, not their circumstances, their habitual thinking, their mental diet, the images they feed to their subconscious mind day after day after day. I've watched this play out thousands of times. A man comes to me, complaining about his financial situation. I ask him a simple question: what do you think about money? And without fail, the answer reveals everything. Money is hard to come by. Rich people are greedy. I never have enough. My family was always poor. There it is, the mental blueprint, the subconscious programming. And his outer world is simply reflecting that inner conviction with absolute precision. So I give him a new mental diet. Not affirmations he doesn't believe, not positive thinking plastered over deep-seated conviction, but a systematic reconditioning of his subconscious mind. Before sleep, he imagines having plenty. He feels the relief of financial security. He sees himself paying bills easily, contributing generously, living comfortably. He doesn't analyze it, doesn't question it, just feels it, accepts it, assumes it's already true. And something remarkable happens, not overnight, not magically, but systematically. Opportunities appear, ideas emerge, connections are made, actions feel natural that previously seemed impossible. His outer world begins to rearrange itself to match his inner conviction. This isn't metaphysics in the mystical sense. It's the mechanics of consciousness, the way your mind actually works, the way creation actually happens. You are the gardener of your own mind. Every thought is a seed. Every feeling waters that seed. Every mental image you dwell upon grows roots in your subconscious. And whatever takes root there must, by law, manifest in your experience. This is why I'm so insistent about what you think before sleep. Your subconscious is most receptive then. The gatekeeper of your conscious mind steps aside. The door is open. Whatever you plant in those final moments before sleep sinks deep into the creative medium of your subconscious. Plant fear and you'll harvest anxiety. Plant worry and you'll harvest problems. Plant gratitude and you'll harvest blessings. Plant the feeling of your wish fulfilled and you'll harvest its manifestation. This is why I say to you now, guard your mental garden with fierce devotion. You wouldn't let anyone dump garbage in your home, would you? Then why allow negative thoughts to pollute the sacred space of your mind? Every day examine what you've been planting. Have you been dwelling on lack? Have you been rehearsing conversations where people reject you? Have you been imagining worst-case scenarios? If so, understand this. You are actively creating those very conditions. You are the architect of your own limitations. But here's the magnificent truth: you can change your harvest simply by changing what you plant today, right now. This very moment. The soil of your subconscious doesn't care about your past. It doesn't judge. It simply responds to whatever seeds you give it now. I want you to start seeing yourself as the master gardener of your life. When a negative thought appears, and they will appear, for you live in a world of contrast. Don't fight it. Don't resist it. Simply acknowledge it, then consciously plant a different seed. Replace the weed with a flower. Replace fear with faith. Replace doubt with certainty. One of my students came to me completely bankrupt. He had lost everything: his business, his home, his confidence. He said, "Dr. Murphy, I look around and all I see is failure. How can I plant seeds of success when reality keeps showing me poverty?" I told him what I'm telling you now. Your current reality is simply last season's harvest. It has nothing to do with what you can plant today. He began, every single day, to spend time in his imagination, living from the feeling of financial abundance. He saw himself writing checks easily. He felt the relief, the freedom, the joy. He planted these seeds consistently, regardless of what his bank account showed. Within 6 months, opportunities began appearing that he never could have predicted. Within a year, he had rebuilt everything and more. The harvest followed the planting, as it always does. You see, the law doesn't ask for your credentials. It doesn't require that you be perfect. It only asks that you be consistent with what you plant. A farmer doesn't plant corn one day, then dig it up the next day to plant wheat, then change his mind again the following day. He plants with decision and allows the natural process to unfold. Your subconscious mind requires the same commitment. When you decide what you want, whether it's health, prosperity, or harmonious relationships, you must hold that vision steady. You cannot affirm abundance on Monday, then spend Tuesday worrying about bills, then Wednesday return to affirmations, expecting consistent results. The subconscious responds to the dominant mental attitude, the prevailing emotional climate you establish. This is why I've always emphasized the importance of choosing a prayer technique and staying with it. Some people prefer the visualization method, seeing themselves already in possession of their good. Others respond better to the feeling method, generating the emotion of the wish fulfilled. Still others find success with the argumentative method, convincing themselves through reason that their desire is natural and right. The technique matters less than your consistency with it. I've watched people jump from method to method, book to book, teacher to teacher, always seeking the secret key that will make manifestation instantaneous and effortless. But the secret was never hidden. It's simply this: decide what you want, choose a method that resonates with you, and practice it daily with feeling and conviction until the subconscious accepts it as true. Consider the example of a woman who came to me years ago, desperate to heal a chronic condition that doctors had said was incurable. She had tried everything: different medications, various alternative treatments, affirmations she'd repeat once or twice then abandon. Nothing worked because nothing was given time to penetrate the subconscious. I gave her a simple technique. Every night before sleep, she was to repeat with feeling, "My body is God's perfect temple. Divine healing is taking place now. I am whole, pure, and perfect." Just this one statement, repeated with conviction until sleep overtook her. For weeks, nothing seemed to change. She called me discouraged, wanting to try something else. I told her what I'm telling you now: stay the course. The subconscious needs time to accept a new pattern, especially when contradicting years of negative conditioning. She continued. After 6 weeks, subtle improvements appeared. After 3 months, her symptoms had diminished significantly. Within 6 months, her doctors were astonished the condition had reversed itself completely. The healing didn't come from the words themselves. Words are simply vehicles. The healing came from her persistent reconditioning of the subconscious mind, from her refusal to uproot her mental seed before it could bear fruit. This is exactly what happens when you work with the law of the subconscious correctly. You don't manipulate reality. You don't force outcomes. You don't wrestle with the external world. You simply impress your desire upon the deeper mind with feeling and conviction, and then you allow the creative intelligence within you to do what it has always done: manifest your mental equivalent in physical form. But here is where most people stumble, where they abandon the process just before the breakthrough. They plant the seed with great enthusiasm. They water it for a few days. They feel the first stirrings of hope. And then, because they don't see immediate results in the visible world, they dig up the seed to check if it's growing. They switch techniques. They doubt the process. They return to their old patterns of thinking. And in doing so, they abort the entire creative cycle. Your subconscious mind is not a vending machine. You cannot insert a positive thought and expect instant gratification. It is a garden, and gardens require patience, consistency, and faith in the unseen processes happening beneath the surface. When you plant a seed in the ground, you don't dig it up every morning to see if roots have formed. You trust the intelligence of nature. You trust that the seed knows what to do. You simply continue to provide the right conditions: water, sunlight, good soil, and nature takes care of the rest. The same principle applies to your mental and spiritual life. Once you've planted your desire in the subconscious through repetition and feeling, your job is not to obsess over the how or the when. Your job is to maintain the mental atmosphere in which that seed can germinate and grow. You do this by returning to your affirmation, by revisiting the feeling of the wish fulfilled, by refusing to entertain contradictory thoughts that would poison the soil. This is the art of mental gardening. This is the discipline that separates those who transform their lives from those who merely wish for change. And I promise you, when you master this art, when you learn to hold your vision steady despite appearances, you will witness wonders that the rational mind would call impossible.